Well, the Buffalo Bills traveled all the way to London to put on an absolute stinker of a game and will go down as one of the most disappointing offensive outputs in Josh Allen's career.
You are now listening to the Watering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Justin Goddard and Andrew Chang.
Welcome in, everybody, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast. I wish we could talk about better news, but in reality, the Bills are now 3-2. They have lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars, a score 25-20, and I mean, there's really not anything great to talk about in this episode. So I do want to talk about the two big things, and then we can get to the game. Well, I guess how the game went. But, I mean, how can we not talk about Matt Milano and Daquan Jones being injured? It looks like, and I'm recording this later in the day on Sunday, we don't know what's going to happen by the time this episode's published. Maybe we will. But it looks like we probably lost Matt Milano for a significant amount of time. And that kind of sucks. Especially since a week ago, you lost your starting outside corner in Tre'Davious White, who looked like he was starting to come back into form. So we lose him. And that wasn't anything foreign to the Bills because they basically had to go. When Tre'Davious White went out the first time with his ACL tear, the Bills kind of figured it out and worked through it. Now they have to go without him and Matt Milano, which I don't think that's going to go too well. This is a new problem for the Buffalo Bills, and let me make this very clear. You do not replace Matt Milano. There is no replacement for a Matt Milano. I think the Bills are going to have to do some serious work in order to bring up Dorian Williams to speed, because I am not liking what I see from Tyrel Dotson. No offense to him, but he's just not it. I think that the Bills ideally were really good with this two matchup linebacker scheme that they were working with under Sean McDermott, and it just kind of sucks to see that now they can't have it. And to put more, to add injury to insult, no pun intended, Daquan Jones left this game due to a right pec injury. And from what I'm seeing, it looks like it's a tear, and you might remember this, but Matt Milano also had like a bit of a tear or strain about like a year or two ago, and he was able to come back in about like 5 weeks. So best case scenario, it's a strain, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Daquan Jones has been playing at like an all-pro level, and the fact that you lose one all-pro linebacker and a defensive tackle who was playing at an all-pro level is just really deflating. So again, you lose Tre'Davious White last week, then you lose your all-pro linebacker on the linebacker level this week. You potentially lose Daquan Jones in the trenches, who's been playing at a really high level this week, and then you really have significant injuries at all three levels of your defense. It's not ideal. I don't even know what the Bills would do in this situation, and I just hope that everyone gets healthy really quick and that we can bounce back from this. And now let's talk about some of the positives, right? So you're probably wondering, at least at the moment, like why in the drafts, like why would we pick Dorian Williams? Why would we pick Terrell Bernard? Well, I guess in these instances, that's why. And I liked what I saw from Dorian Williams in the preseason, but preseason football is preseason football. He was out there for a little bit today, but it looked like for the most part, Tyrel Dotson kind of took those snaps from him eventually, which, I wasn't too thrilled about. But hey, we don't know how it really is going to shake out. My man Tyrel Dotson was also out-snapping Terrell Bernard in the preseason, and look who won that job and who's been playing at a great level. So can't really necessarily say that's the reason, or you can't really look at that and be like, yep, we just know Terrell Dotson's going to take over. But it is good to know that we have a draft pick waiting in the wings and who could potentially take over. And I guess that's why you take those late third round picks and try to make something out of nothing. And so far, it's been a hit. I really hope the same thing can be said about Dorian Williams. Now let's talk about the replacement for Daquan Jones. Again, there is no replacing a Daquan Jones, similar to how you can't replace a Matt Milano. Now the good news is that we have Poona Ford. Poona Ford, really like what he was in Seattle, and I like how he's here in Buffalo, and the fact that he's been a healthy scratch is a little bit concerning, and the fact that we called up a hybrid defensive end, defensive tackle for this game, and Poona Ford still wasn't able to play, kind of makes me alarmed. However, I think the path for him to get on the field is very, very clear, and it's almost like a luxury that you can have a Poona Ford be a healthy scratch for you. I don't foresee that being the case moving forward, but I'm excited to see what Poona Ford can do for this Bills defense moving forward. Yeah, so we got the injuries out of the way, and I guess we can kind of move on to the game, which doesn't make things any better. And if there's one way I could describe this game and what made me the most frustrated, like at most, was the offense. And let me explain it to you. Punt, 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 touchdown, end of half. Then punt, punt, interception, touchdown, touchdown, fumble. That was terrible. The Bills got their first touchdown, 4 minutes and 30 seconds left in the second quarter, and they didn't get their second touchdown until 3 minutes and 41 seconds of the fourth quarter left. How horrific of an offensive output. I really cannot believe, and this, I'm just going to go on a rant here. I cannot believe how bad that offensive output was against this Jacksonville Jaguars defense. And I knew that the rushing offense probably would take a hit because Jacksonville is a pretty good defensive front, and they're pretty good against the run. But my God, I didn't think that their offense, like their passing offense, would look so suspect. How many punts is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 punts, 1 fumble, 3 touchdowns. And those late touchdowns, it's like, okay, where was this earlier? And I understand that the Jags were kind of playing in a prevent kind of defense, but like, my God, Ken Dorsey. And I don't even know if it's all on Ken Dorsey, because in a little bit, in a ways, on the stat sheets, it looked like Josh Allen had a fairly pretty good day, over 300 yards, 1 pick, 2 touchdowns. And I actually didn't mind that pick. He was really just kind of throwing it, and they needed to get into the game. And it was a true 50-50 ball that I swear usually Diggs comes down with that most times than not, but he just got out leveraged in that situation and got the ball kind of ripped away from him at the end. But in general, like, it took Ken Dorsey and the offense, and I'm really saying everyone on offense, so long to finally put something together, and it only happened in kind of garbage time moments, really. And that's so bad to say, but it's the truth. My God, it was just watching that game was like, I don't know, you were just like kind of you ever watch like MMA or UFC, and you kind of see like these old legends of the sport kind of come back and fight, and you're like, oh God, they are not what I remember. Well, that's kind of how I felt with this Bills team, right? First game against the Jets, really suspect offensive like performance. But then after that, Josh Allen does really good, really good. He gets AFC Player of the Week. Josh Allen leads in completion percentage. And then out of nowhere, you're thinking, hey, we're going to carry this over to London to play our quote-unquote home game, and it just didn't happen. the yardage and the stats might suggest that Josh had a good day, but I would just say it really didn't. And it sounds like so, how do I want to say this? Hypocritical, because we needed like the reckless Josh Allen to kind of come out for a little bit. We needed like the Josh Allen to come out and completely take over this game, because no one else was taking over the game. No one. And it was truly, truly upsetting to watch. And God, it's not going to ruin my week, because I refuse to let a game ruin my week. But it was incredibly frustrating to watch, and it just sucks. It really does. Okay, now let's talk about other parts of the game. But geez, man, I'm just thinking about the Bills' defense. Let's talk about some high points. The Bills' defense. I think, in general, they played really good. We're talking about a Jags team that went to the divisional round, almost knocked off the Chiefs last year in the playoffs, and they haven't played their best ball yet. And then the Bills lose 2 key starters on defense, and the Bills were like, you know what? Sean McDermott and the defensive unit were like, hey, okay, time to go. Here we go. Let's get it done. We got no excuses. Next man up mentality, and they did that, and they held the Jags to 11 points all up until the fourth quarter. And to be honest, the only reason why they gave up those 2 touchdowns at the end was because they were so gassed for being on the field. Like, the Bills' offense did not give the Bills' defense any type of break. You had AJ Epinesa, who was playing out of his goddamn mind on oxygen because he just couldn't do anything else. You had Von Miller on a pitch count, who eventually couldn't play because he met his snap counts, and I really like that, honestly. Like, I don't want to, your first game back, don't overuse Von Miller. It's a very long season, and that's the silver lining here, is that it's a marathon, not a sprint. So let's get into more about what I liked on the defense and what I didn't like on defense. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Dick DeGroat, Bill's dad. Now back to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show here on the Buffalo FAMBase network. I didn't mention this at the top of the show just because I just had to talk about the injuries and this game and how frustrating it was. But you can find this episode, our podcast. Justin's off for the week, so I'm taking over for this one. We're all on social media at the Wandering Buffalo, and on all audio platforms, and of course on YouTube. So check us out, please. Okay, what else did I like on defense? I kind of mentioned that AJ Epinesa was playing lights out, and he really was. Yeah, it's kind of crazy that he's in a contract year right now, and if he can kind of keep this play going, he's probably going to outprice himself from Buffalo. And if this is truly a situation where AJ Epinesa can keep this level of play going, that's a fantastic problem for the Bills to have. I think that it would mean the world to get AJ Epinesa playing his best ball, Poona Ford coming in and filling that void until Daquan Jones comes back in the season. Hopefully he can come back in the season and really help contribute to this Bills defense, because he is a true problem. And man, Von Miller coming back too, Leonard Floyd, Ed Oliver, God, it just gives me chills just thinking that that's a true possibility here on the Bills defensive front. And one thing I'm just kind of going all over the place as things kind of fly in my head. One person on defense who we were heavily debating for the Ken Dorsey Tableau Award was Kyrie Elam. I was advocating so hard for this man to hit the field. Like, all right. And I the dilemma was like, hey, how was our first round pick being a healthy scratch over and over and over? Well, we saw the reason why. This man looked lost, confused. He was a liability out there. My God, like, For Christ's sake, he was benched, and a practice squad corner came in and like surpassed him. Kyer Elam is a first round pick, and you got surpassed by Christian Benford, a 5th or 6th round, I can't remember, and then you get passed again by a practice squad player. Like, I don't know what this man is doing, but it's not working. Maybe he's not a zone corner. Maybe he's just not a good corner at all. Like, a hot take. I know it. People are saying, like, give him another year, give him another year. Like, this man might be a bust. Like, and I don't even know if that's a hot take anymore. Like, he's just a straight up, in my eyes right now, you're not getting a jersey in your first round pick. You're a bust. You are a bust. That is my hot take. That is unacceptable. And how many times did we see the Calvin Ridley basically get a ball thrown his way, and Calvin Ridley just literally looked by himself, and then after he turns upfield, Elam's like slowly coming back to him, and not even slowly, he just got like that bad. It's kind of embarrassing, honestly, for Brandon Beane. Like, how did this happen? And I don't know if the Bills can trade him now or do anything, but at this moment, it's not looking promising for Elam, and the Bills have to figure it out. And I'm confident that they can figure it out. And I'm not saying that Elam can't bounce back from this, but I think his ceiling might be much lower than what we all originally had thought it would be, which sucks. Now, let's talk about some other things that really kind of grinded my gears in this, I guess, game, is that just the injuries in general. And I already mentioned that up top, but you just saw people kind of going down left and right. Deion Dawkins, Dalton Kincaid, Leonard Floyd, Ed Oliver cramping up, Kingsley Jonathan, Teron Johnson. In Teron Johnson, after the game, he had a presser saying, like, yeah, that turf sucked. That turf really, really, really sucked. And what pisses me off the most about that is that there was actual grass right underneath where all the fans were. And I understand that football takes a tremendous amount of strain on natural grass and that it costs a lot to maintain. But it's clear that the NFL just is like, well, that costs too much. Well, when are we going to start prioritizing, like, our players' health? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you have, like, all these amazing players in the NFL for 32 teams. Everyone has star players. And the turf is literally knocking players out one by one by one. And the players are super vocal about it. And the NFL is not doing anything about it. Like, I can't remember who I heard this from, but MetLife had terrible turf. So what they do, they replaced it with less terrible turf. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you went through the effort of ripping that turf up just to put down more turf? Like, bro, you already went all the way, you went through the effort of taking that off. You might as well just lay grass down and, like, maintained it. And I'm really excited that the Bills are going to go to a natural grass field when this new stadium is up, because it's just not ideal. Like, I prioritize the health of all NFL players. That's how I want the NFL to do it. But it's clear that some franchises or some stadiums, they're just like, nah, this turf is just easy. It's more cost effective. And I understand that. But, like, when you lose players like this, it ain't it. The math ain't mathin', at least to me. So, I don't know. It just absolutely frustrating. Okay, now let's talk about the things that I kind of liked outside of the defense, and which would be the offensive side of the football, which doesn't really feel like much, honestly. And although it took this is kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Because Ken Dorsey didn't adjust until the very, 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 very end of the game, like less than 4 minutes left. And I understand that the Jags were playing in like a prevent style defense, but he did kind of switch up the script and start pushing the ball down the field, and he kind of had to. And you know, that was great and all, but like that needed to happen way earlier. So I hope that Ken Dorsey kind of takes this L back to America and, thinks about it like, oh man, maybe I need to adjust sooner. And I know that there's never real halftime adjustments. It's more like tweaks, but like, dude, after the first like 4 or 5 punts, like you gotta tweak way earlier than that. If you get 4 punts in a row, I'm tweaking like everything. Like, well, maybe not everything, but like you got to do more than what you did, because it's clear that the Jags knew what you were going to do. They matched your tempo, and you just could do nothing about it. And I guess that's the only real good thing about offense I really liked. I didn't mind the Josh Allen turnover, as I mentioned. I thought the Bills' running game was really bad. We always talk about, like, Justin and I always talk about, like, hey, when the Bills' leading rusher is Josh Allen, that's usually not a good thing. Well, he was the leading rusher this time, but he only had 14 yards. So, like, not even the Josh Allen runs were really effective. Yes, he got a touchdown on one of them, but, like, if you watch the game, you just knew it wasn't the same. This was not the same Bills team. I just wanted the Bills to get out of the game, regardless of a win or loss. After the injuries, I was like, I just can't see any other players go down, honestly. And the last thing I really want to talk about before I get out of here is the fact that this was considered a home game. So, kind of frustrating if you ask me, and not something that is new, because when we all knew this was coming at the schedule release, is the fact that the Jags got to stay in London for a whole week. Really just be there, get comfortable. And yes, they probably wanted to go back home, but that doesn't change the fact that their bodies are probably a little more acclimated than how the Bills' bodies were. But we lose a home game because the Bills have to travel all the way to London, and it was terrible. It was terrible. And they left on a Thursday to play on a Sunday, so you lose like almost a day and a half to travel, and it was just awful. I just don't think that the Bills handled it very well. I don't think that the NFL schedule was fair in that instance. Like, we should have honestly played maybe a different team that wasn't already there, so that it was kind of even. And really quick, to those people who are saying, like, the jet lag caused all the injuries, I would disagree with that. There's not a lot of evidence out there to prove such things. And I mean, if you can find that evidence, please share it with me. I'm not saying that you're completely wrong or your opinions aren't right. I just personally don't believe that, and I haven't seen anything with credible information out there to prove that. So in this instance, I'm gonna go ahead and say, like, nah, that wasn't the reason why the Bills had so many injuries. Now we can point to the turf. That is for real. So I guess just to kind of recap this abysmal of NFL outing in London is that the Jags won. They were the better team. Kind of sucks to say that, but they really were. They adjusted. They kept doing their thing. The Bills defense put their best effort forward despite injuries. But ultimately, I just kind of look at this Bills offense and wonder, what the hell were you doing? We need more from you, and we have higher expectations. You just had Josh Allen be the AFC Player of the Week, and you follow it up with that? Like, come on. And Josh Allen wasn't the reason why we lost today. It was just, everything just looked so hard for whatever reason. And, I had a friend saying, like, Josh Allen sucked today. He sucks. He sucks so much, and he's an Eagles fan. And I was like, I don't really think it's all on him. Like, he's 1/11th of a team, and he definitely wasn't the reason why the Bills lost, but he's not the reason why the Bills won. And the Bills need to think about that when they go into Sunday Night Football against the Giants, because I feel like the Bills have had so many like mid-season or like end of the season or regular season wake-up calls and bounce back really strong. But eventually, how many times are we going to have to like learn our lesson, take this medicine, like get it together? And that's all I got to say for this episode. So I'm sorry it's not a cheerful one, Didn't really have a good game script kind of going into this episode. I just had to voice how I felt, and that's how I feel. So if you agree with me, disagree with me, or you want to share some more of your opinions, please do so. So you can do that by reaching out to us on all social media platforms and on YouTube by searching up the Wandering Buffalo podcast. We have a great website. Jake, our executive producer, does a great job of doing that. So please check us out. Rate, review, subscribe. Would love it. Other than that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. And hey, Sunday Night Football, we got the Giants coming into Orchard Park for an actual home game. So hey, hopefully that will be a much better discussion afterwards. Thanks, and go Bills.